As the flames at the entrance to the Fire God Palace grew more intense, everyone began to wonder what the hell was happening. Let's roll back a little bit. Just minutes after Lin entered the palace, a new hell-level difficulty was unexpectedly added to the dungeon, which made everyone shocked. Looking toward the entrance, many began to wonder whether it was Lin who caused this. Meanwhile, in the small courtyard, Old Ning and Meng Anwen were chatting and enjoying their afternoon tea. Suddenly, Old Ning paused, his hand trembling as he held his teacup. Meng Anwen looked up, asking what was wrong. As the principal of Xiajing Academy and responsible for the dungeon hall, Old Ning was always the first to know about any changes within the academy. Stroking his beard, he slowly revealed that the Fire God Palace had just activated hell-level difficulty. After saying this, his eyes sparkled with curiosity as he asked Meng Anwen if he knew who had just entered the dungeon. Meng raised his teacup and took a sip. Given what Old Ning said, he didn't need to guess. It must have been Lin. Both of them were also aware of the elusive elemental shards in these dungeons. Perhaps Lin had the same idea. What most didn't know was that these shards could only be dropped in hell-level difficulty, and even then, the drop rate is very low, and it heavily relies on luck. Furthermore, activating hell-level difficulty required wiping out a massive number of monsters in the dungeon quickly, which would activate a hidden mechanic that would fundamentally impact the dungeon's environment. While some were aware of these conditions, very few could actually achieve this. Even for Old Ning himself, who had tried when he was younger, however, he never managed to get the shards. Even after Lin figured all this out, he doubted Lin would have any better luck. Seems like Old Ning is still holding grudges against Lin for stealing his granddaughter, but you can't blame our boy. Who wouldn't be rizzed by him? Anyway, Meng Anwen smirked while looking into the distance. Unlike Old Ning, he had confidence in Lin. After all, Lin always managed to bring them surprises. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, the fire element seemed more alive than ever, causing the lava to start bubbling and the sparks began to intensify. The monsters were becoming stronger, and the flames continued to burn more fiercely. The skeletal warriors were still engulfed in blazing flames that suddenly became more intense than ever, and their HP was slowly fading away. Even the mobs that the skeletal warriors could previously defeat with just 2 strikes were now considerably tougher to deal with. However, Lin couldn't afford to waste time on these weak mobs. He needed to find the boss, or the skeleton warriors wouldn't withstand the continuous fire damage. As hordes of skeletons scattered in all directions, the entire map of the dungeon soon unfolded in Lin's mind, with the boss's location clearly marked. After swiftly clearing the trash mobs in his path, what came into view was a massive palace surrounded by roaring flames, with a spherical object floating above it. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be an eye encased in fire. Suddenly, the fiery giant eye opened, sounding an alarm. "Intruder detected!" the eye shouted. What followed was the ground began to tremble as magma erupted from below, and not long after, from the palace gates emerged several tall figures clad in thick armor, wielding flaming spears, and themselves seemed to be made purely out of fire. Turned out, these were level 35 guards of the Fire God Palace. These guards had remarkably high attributes. All 4 attributes were above 10,000, but to Lin's surprise, they were actually hell-level elite monsters. He was certain he chose the nightmare difficulty. Or precisely, that was the highest difficulty at the time. So how could there be hell-level elites? Could he have triggered some special mechanism? No wonder the mobs got tougher, and the continuous fire damage increased. But there was little time for contemplation, as the guards had launched their attack. Swinging their flaming spear, they instantly eliminated the 2 leading skeletal warriors, while also stunning those nearby as well. To him, what had happened was no longer important. He knew that his immediate priority was to quickly handle the guards. The control skill and constant stuns were a pain in the butt. However, he had a plan. He summoned his scythe, and this was his only way to cleanse the stun. Soon after, he called forth the undead general. The general waved his scepter, sending out a burst of red light that dispelled the stun effect. The spark inside the skeletal warrior's sockets turned from green to red, as they quickly formed ranks and began a coordinated attack on the guards. With each successive strike, the first guard was swiftly brought down, followed by the second, and immediately after, the system announced the defeated level 34 Fire God Palace Guard. Experience gained 1.36 million, acquired 3 fire crystal cores. Surprisingly, the guards left bodies behind instead of dissipating like typical fire elements. What a surprise. This just made things much easier. Noticing that most of the skeletal warriors in the front were severely depleted, and he wasn't able to recall them to the summoning space due to continuous fire damage applied to the skeletons, Lin knew it was time to let them complete their final mission. With those words, he raised his hand, and the leading skeletons charged towards the palace. As they stepped into the palace, the fiery giant eye above trembled violently, shooting several beams of fire that quickly killed 12 of the skeleton warriors. Immediately after, the gates of the palace flung open, and a massive swarm of Fire God Palace guards poured out. The timing was perfect for Lin, who had been anticipating this moment. He knew the bodies of the fallen guards would soon vanish. Watching the horde charge toward him, Lin swiftly cast a slowing curse as massive red shackles bounded them, halting the guards in their tracks. His skeletal warriors quickly grabbed 2 of the guard corpses and hurled them into the crowd. Following this, a massive explosion rocked the entire palace, and the dungeon itself trembled. Lin relentlessly used corpse explosion spells until the last guard fell. The system notifications flooded his mind while gaining insane amounts of experience, but he had no time to check the details. As the palace doors returned to a quiet state, Lin slowly walked inside. Entering the palace, Lin could feel the fire elements raging more intensely than outside. The first thing he saw was a pond made of magma, and within looked something like a garden surrounded by various red plants. Walking across a stone bridge towards the center, he spotted a beautifully blooming flower amidst the flames. However, as 2 skeletal warriors approached it, the surrounding magma churned violently, instantly engulfing them. He knew this flower must have been something valuable. He sent several more skeletal warriors to go closer, but nothing happened this time. As the magma settled, he decided to reach out and pluck the flower, but just at that moment, a giant hand made of flames emerged from the magma and slammed down towards him. That will be the end for today's video. The studio left a message saying there will be a hiatus, and because of that, there will only be 1 chapter this week. Well, it is what it is. Anyway, special thanks to the channel members and recent super chats. Thank you everyone for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.